We are Rogue Media Sports.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Start clean with Clorox, because Clorox delivers a powerful clean every time. Because messes happen. Because the charcoal mask. Great, because why would I put that on my face when I could drop it in my sink? This is what I get for multitasking. Ugh, why is charcoal so sticky?
Hello?
Hey, Janice. I am so sorry. I thought I was on mute. No, we don't need to reschedule. I'll just stay off camera. Ooh, yeah, that happens. So start clean with Clorox. Use Clorox products as directed.
It is the Doomsday Podcast. Matt Mosley with Ed Werder. Ed is in the bowels of AT&T Stadium, where he's just finished up several interviews. He's actually in the interview room as we tape this after the game. But Ed, is kind of fun. You get usually an exclusive with one of the Cowboys stars after these games. And in this particular game, you got to talk to Trayvon Diggs moments after the game. And I know you were able to kind of ask him perhaps what his take was on the strange approach that Washington had in starting the game with throwing against him.
Yeah, I did ask him a couple of questions outside the locker room in our one-on-one interview. And the first question was, he was wearing, the hat and T-shirt that they won as NFC East champions. And I mentioned to him, you don't know this because you've never played in the NFL when the media was allowed in the locker room, but we're not allowed in the locker room anymore during this pandemic. So tell me what it was like in there. And so he gave a very nice detailed description of the emotions of in the locker room as they celebrated this success for the defensive players. Obviously, a year ago at this time, they were finishing out the worst defensive season in franchise history, allowed the most points in 60 years of Cowboys football. But tonight, a whole different sensation for them and experience for them. And, Diggs I asked him, I said, what did you think? What did you make of Washington coming out with Taylor Heineke and you covering Terry McLaurin one-on-one all over the field throughout the game as part of your defensive game plan that they threw at you deep down the field on the first play of the game from scrimmage for Washington, when Kelvin Joseph, a second-round pick, was making his first NFL start at cornerback on the other side of the field. They chose to throw at Trayvon Diggs, the NFL interception leader. And he ran the route probably as well and maybe better than McLaurin. I thought there was never a chance McLaurin was going to catch the ball. And, Diggs on that route is just so precise and perfect, and went up and got the ball. And his point of view was they wanted to make a statement after, the Cowboys won the game 2 weeks ago on defense so decisively, that Micah Parsons and Randy Gregory both talked about the Cowboys were in his head. They were in Taylor Heineke's head early in that game, first and second quarter. So Washington, aware of that, tried to make a statement of their own by beating the Cowboys' best defensive player. Arguably, you might say Micah Parsons, you might say DeMarcus Lawrence, you might say Randy Gregory, but let's say the NFL interception leader. And instead, Diggs flips the game on that play from a statement standpoint, sets up the Cowboys' first touchdown with his 11th interception of the season, which matches Everson Walls' franchise record set in 1981. And Everson Walls was here to see this whole thing. So now Diggs has 2 more games in the regular season to try to break the franchise record for interceptions in a single season. It's the most interceptions by any player in at least 40 years in the entire NFL.
Well, I love it. I feel like when you've been at the AT&T Stadium for about 15 hours, you should get rewarded with a nice exclusive interview. And so it was good to get to visit with Trayvon Diggs. And he's one of the best route runners in the league right now. He just plays defense. And McLaurin, I got to say, Ed, I mean, it's got to be a little bit embarrassing for a really good young player who's been heralded, as one of Washington's few electric type offensive players. And yet his stats against Diggs this year are horrible. I mean, when you literally put like when he lines up across from McLaurin, he does nothing. Like however many targets it is. Let's say there's 12 targets. It's like 0 catches. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing, I think, for McLaurin.
And he did beat Diggs for a touchdown when they matched up last year in Diggs' rookie season. I think it was like a 52-yard touchdown play, but they virtually shut him out in 2 consecutive games this year. And, the Cowboys' ability to dominate their division opponents, they're the only team in the NFL that's won all of their division games. And I thought it was interesting before you call for the theme music, as I know you're about to do, I thought it was interesting that the Cowboys have scored 40 points or more 4 times this year, and all of those have happened at AT&T Stadium, and 3 of them have happened against their division rivals. All Philadelphia, Washington, and the Giants. The Cowboys scored 40 on all of them here, and the Falcons, of course. So we'll see what they have, coming up. Better opponents obviously await them. Maybe even next week with the Arizona Cardinals, who have been slumping of late. But the Cowboys have dominated this division, a division that has seen 17 different winners over the past 17 years, an NFL record in and of itself, and many more records set here tonight by the Cowboys.
Well, it is a very exciting time. And as long as the Cowboys can avoid playing a road game, they should go to the Super Bowl. That would be nice. All right, it is that time. Frito of Frito Nation Productions, please play the music. All right, it is the Doomsday Podcast. Ed is at the stadium in the interview room where he's just talked to Mike McCarthy and several others. I think DeMarcus Lawrence came through. I would think Micah Parsons did. And I'm in Tulsa for I tried to be at the game, but I've landed in Tulsa instead, spending some time with family in Oklahoma. But it's great to be with you. I don't have my usual studio sound, but that's okay. We've got via Zoom, and Frito will make this all sound fine. Ed, before we start breaking this down, it is funny that, and I saw you tweeted about this, but Micah Parsons has become, not only a great player, but a fun quote and a fun guy.
Right.
And he seems to always have sort of an animal quote at the ready. And I think his most recent quote involved an alligator in talking about how they wouldn't get complacent. Let's see here. Oh, here it is. He says the team's not satisfied. Quote, "We're not alligators. We don't get paralyzed after we eat."
I didn't know that about alligators. But an interesting point that Micah Parsons makes, and he did have his 13th sack of his rookie season today. But the point that was made about him during the week, and I think it was Randy Gregory who said, you know what, his quotes are always clever and polished, and that's because he actually prepares for these media encounters. He thinks about what you might ask and what he might say that comes off well, and this is a perfect example of that accusation being true.
Okay, Ed. So there you are at AT&T. You're probably down the field when they were showing that Raiders game, and an hour or so before the Cowboys were set to play, it became evident that the Cowboys had won the NFC East. It turns out, now that we've heard from McCarthy, that McCarthy really did not address that with the team beforehand. Can you give us a sense for, after hearing the interviews and hearing McCarthy, how much they are taking the time to kind of celebrate that? But I thought that was an interesting quote that McCarthy had that basically said he thought it was, quote, irrelevant to even talk about them winning the NFC East before the game. And I kind of like that. I don't really think there was any need to have a big pregame celebration, but I thought it was okay to go ahead and celebrate the moment afterwards.
Sure, especially after the year he had last year. Comes in, he goes 6-10 with a team that Jerry Jones quite honestly thought was capable of going deep into the playoffs and maybe making a Super Bowl run. He justified that point of view, and that expectation was the reason he explained he hired McCarthy, a man who had coached for 13 seasons and won a number of championships and had playoff success and had been the head coach of a Super Bowl championship team. I think the Cowboys have viewed winning the division, as most of us have for quite some time, that it became a mere formality at a certain point. Like I said, they're the only team in football that's won all of their division games, and they've won them decisively for the most part. There was no question who had the best quarterback in the division, and there was no question as they played these games which had the best team, and that was Dallas, and they demonstrated that, and they celebrated tonight as they should. But everybody also made it very clear that hats and T-shirts for winning divisions is not what they're here for, that they have a greater goal. They've let that slip a few times. They've mentioned the Super Bowl. They've not been afraid to say that, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to me that in this very room after the game, DeMarcus, Lawrence was asked, so now that you've won the NFC East, what's your next goal? And he said, win all our playoff games, make the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. And, the Cowboys in this game not only scored the most points in any NFL game this season with 56, but they also became the only team in the league with touchdowns on offense, defense, and special teams in a single game this season. And Dak Prescott said that they're nearly impossible to beat when they're playing at their highest level. And certainly he was, while becoming the first quarterback in NFL history to complete scoring passes to a wide receiver, a running back, a tight end, and even an offensive lineman in the same regular season game. And the point I want to make is, we all sit here and think, getting home playoff games is most important probably to Green Bay. Green Bay probably has the biggest home field advantage in football late in the year because of the incredibly severe weather conditions that can exist. And I can attest that I've covered a lot of playoff games in Green Bay, including the NFC Championship game, Brett Favre's last game when they lost to the Giants and it was 33 below zero. And the Packers have won all of their home games this year. I think they've won 9 in a row overall. But the Cowboys, and McCarthy's kind of made this point that we need to keep playing hard and keep winning because we need to secure as high a seed as possible. And the reason that that's so, Matt, is they need as many home playoff games as they can get. Here's why. They're the highest scoring team in the NFL at home, averaging 38.4 points per game. They're 14th in the NFL in scoring on the road, averaging just 23.5 points a game. That's easily the highest differential in the NFL. In fact, no other team has a double-digit disparity in home and road scoring. And, of course, the Cowboys have one that's 15 points. So while they've won on the road, and they won at New England, they beat Bill Belichick at home for the first time, but it was without Tom Brady. They're coming off having won 3 consecutive road games in December, not playing well on offense, but dominating on defense. So they're capable of winning on the road, but they're a whole different team when they're at home, and they're going to be very tough. Nobody in the league is going to want to play Dallas at home in the postseason.
I think you're right. And it feels like a different team, and you don't want to draw too many. I mean, I think the huge story for me coming out of this thing, Ed, is this slump storyline. Again, we could be talking about something completely different next Sunday, so you never know. But for Dak to come out and basically have 322, he had 322 yards at the half. He completed 20 of his first 22 passes. It is important for the Cowboys to play at home. It's important to keep this quarterback at home. But, I mean, even throwing out – think about some of those – there were a couple of games at home that were like clunkers that he had in this whole whatever slump you want to call it. And yet tonight, man, he was back on point. And then after the game, he had some quote about he doesn't let other people's opinions get in his head or something along those lines. But I think that's not only big for Dak, but it's big for the psyche of this team to see its quarterback for one game back to an elite level. I mean, Ed, they had one blowout in the last 6 or 7 weeks against Atlanta. But for the most part, this kind of Dak has not been seen in a couple of months, in a month and a half or so. I think for the psyche of what they're trying to accomplish and everything, it was huge to see their quarterback go out and do what he did tonight.
Well, and how, I asked him about how reassuring it was for him because, I mean, this offseason, he's coming back from this major injury. He signs the richest contract in franchise history, and he's standing up there every week talking about how the defense won the game. Like, how hard must that be for a guy who's as competitive as Dak Prescott is? And I mean, they had been in a 2-month offensive slump. In fact, I was trying to put that in some perspective before the game, depending on how it played out, whether it would be relevant or not. And the most interesting thing I found was, Amari Cooper obviously spoke out this week and sort of, brought attention not only to himself by saying he could contribute more on third downs and in the red zone at a time when, since week 11, the Cowboys were the worst red zone team in the entire league, 32nd in the NFL. Like, there's some horrible teams out there, and the Cowboys were last in the NFL for the past 5 weeks in the red zone. And so here's what defined it to me. The CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper had not had a 100-yard receiving game since Halloween 2 months ago, and that was Cooper Rush's only NFL start. Amari Cooper hadn't had a 100-yard receiving game with Dak Prescott since week 1 against Tampa Bay. And so, yeah, I think it was hugely important for Dak Prescott to come out and play well and execute at a high level and, throw for the highest total for a first half in franchise history and the most that any quarterback's thrown for before halftime in a game this season among the many records that he set. But just watching him, I mean, he was clearly seeing the field well. He was in a rhythm. He liked the plays that were being called. He was very decisive. I thought he moved with ease, which we haven't seen in a long time. Whether it was extending a play out of the pocket and being accurate with the ball, or it was, even running on occasion. I just thought it was probably the best game he's played, all things considered, all year long. And he continues to say after the game, you guys can call it a slump if you want to. I never did, which technically I guess he didn't. But the thing he kept making the point of is, I'm healthy and I've been healthy. It's not a health issue. He said tonight, without equivocation, this is the best that I have felt since the season started, which he also, as you know, confided in me before last week's game when he didn't look very good at all. But it's interesting to me that he had such a high quarterback rating against this very same team that 2 weeks ago he had his lowest quarterback rating of the season and the lowest in his career for a game in which the Cowboys won. And tonight he looked like a completely different player. Is that Dak Prescott at home? Maybe. Got to be a big part of it. But he needs to build on this for them to continue feeling good.
I think you're right. And I think when you saw him take off and run a couple of times, I think that really was a sight for sore eyes, because that has not been a big part of his game. And
right.
You've always said that, Ed, that when he's able to do that, it just gives the Cowboys a different look. I mean, I watched it today. Buffalo knew they needed to close out a game against the Patriots, and they had a quarterback who could just run over people and has the mobility. I don't think Dak is that guy right now, but the fact that he could still get out there and at least be somewhat of a threat with his legs, I think is important. Ed, I did want to say real quick, I'm so pleased to talk about one of our longtime partners in Doomsday, and that is Hodges Capital. They do a tremendous job. And it was the Hodges family. Don and Craig Hodges formed this investment firm back in 1989. And what they do, Ed, the proprietary research they do is pretty remarkable. They're able to cover 900 different companies, and so they can make recommendations. And they are just incredible. Small cap strategy, multi cap strategy. Ed, for you, that would be what we call this large cap strategy. I think we'd call that, but they're just incredible at growing people's retirement and making those kinds of decisions. In fact, my buddy Craig Hodges, who went to Baylor, I might add, you see him a lot on CNBC, sort of giving his opinion on different stocks. That is how much he is viewed. So I wanted to take a second, Ed, and I know you would like to thank them too, our great partners, Hodges Capital, All right, on the Doomsday Podcast. Ed, let's let's do this right now. Let's go to the man we call Glenn Stretch Smith for his stretch plays, and he has A's all around. He's a very happy man this evening. Here is Glenn Stretch Smith. Stretch, let's start on defense. That defensive line continues to bring a great amount of pressure. What does it bring to this for Dan Quinn and this defense to have so many different players rotating in?
Well, what you're seeing again is you're seeing guys chase the football, and I'm talking about 11 guys chasing the football. But specifically, when you get the big guys up front chasing, closing the pocket, collapsing it down, and then if a quarterback does get out of there, all of a sudden it's the chase, it's the pursuit. You saw tonight Heineke boot out of there. He knew he couldn't get the angle on Lawrence. He put his foot in the ground to go north and south, and when he did, Lawrence was a little behind him. He put his foot in the ground and went and caught up to him. Those are things that you want to see from your defense. You see guys chasing the football with a real sense of urgency. And I'm talking about whether it's Gallimore, Gregory, Lawrence, Armstrong, Digizua, Basham. They're all chasing the crap out of the football because they know, hey, you know what? I don't have to save up anything right here. I can go hard 2 or 3 and know I'm going to get a blow real quick. To me, that's a big difference in what you see right now from this defense from what you saw early in the season. You're seeing fresh guys get after the quarterback. Combine that with the fact that early in the game, Quinn walks up, both linebackers in the A-gap. The offensive line then makes a solid call. They got to turn the widest guy loose. That was Lawrence. Then the backers go backing out. The end fires, and there's nobody there to block him. It's the scheme. It's how they're rotating guys. It's a feeding frenzy defensively, and I think when you think about grading this group, you think about Joseph coming in and filling in for Lewis. You think about Wilson coming back. You think about Thompson coming back. All of a sudden, you're seeing guys that you're like, God, who is that? Or where did he come from? And all of it, they're just making plays. And so what happens is it's an addicted feel. The entire defense, the entire coaching staff on that side of they did a great job tonight.
Wow. And you can hear Stretch is doing some drag racing tonight following his TV appearance on WFAA Channel 8. Stretch, this is that play that Lawrence made was remarkable, but in a sense, those plays have been made all year. I mean, I don't know, I heard them talking about on the broadcast, how they're constantly throwing jugs, machines, balls at the defense. But at some point you realize, Stretch, that's not a fluke when a guy puts his paw up there, knocks the ball down and catches it. That seems to, as you're kind of pointing out, come from drilling, coaching, leads to those kinds of plays. Another incredibly athletic play by DeMarcus Lawrence, I thought.
Well, yeah, I like that you made the reference to some guy coming out of Texas Stadium who had twice pipes on a 6-cylinder Mustang coming out of there, and it sure sounded loud, and he couldn't outrun this pickup truck I'm in. But the point you're making, Matt, is yes, catching the football is awesome. I mean, hand-eye coordination. But what was more unbelievable to me is that he went and scored with it and high-stepped into the end zone. I mean, how many defensive ends can really make a guy miss, jump over a guy, and then go score? I mean, it was impressive. So, again, it's contagious to the entire defense. You see them on the sideline. You see them. They're for one another. I mean, it really is. It's fun to watch and to think how far this defense has come from a defense last year who couldn't stop anybody and who was in a 3-4 scheme. They were in the wrong scheme for Lawrence. I mean, it was just a complete mess to see the makeover that is it is amazing, and it's great that you're seeing these young guys, like I said, Joseph step in and making plays and making significant contribution to the defense.
All right, and the last one I was going to bring up, you gave the whole defense an A, but in particular, Stretch, Trayvon Diggs does it again. I don't know why they. I mean, I know why they go throw at him, because occasionally he does give up big plays, but I mean, the Heineke opens the game, and that guy ends up running the route. Think about that, Stretch. To me, that was pretty amazing. McLaurin's supposed to be one of the better receivers in the NFL, and he didn't even have a chance against Trayvon Diggs. I mean, on those kinds of routes, I mean, this guy is uncanny with his ability to time those things up.
And that's exactly what you see him doing. It's almost as if he baited the throw to know, hey, you know what, I'm going to go make the play here on this go route. It's amazing. He's seeing things. I mean, and what I love is even when his name is not called, when you see him read and recognize route concepts, what guys are doing, I mean, he's really comfortable with what he's doing and how he's doing it. And, yeah, he's going to get beat some. All of those guys, unless it's Dion, who's a Hall of Famer, I mean, they're going to get beat some. But I just love how he plays the game. I love kind of his attitude. He can tackle well. He plays with great leverage. And as do a lot of the secondary guys. And I think that's what I'm talking about here, is you got to really think about the big picture and how everybody has come together in understanding the job that Dan Quinn is doing. And I mean, if you're not considering him as the assistant coach of the year and as a job that's just unbelievable and been unbelievable from really week one, I mean, I think it's a phenomenal story, and the Dallas defense is getting after people's ass, and that's what you want to see.
All right, on the offensive side of the ball, the big story is Dak. Now, again, everybody's going to say, well, what slump, and yuck it up. I mean, I think it was very obvious that he was in a bad way for a good while. I think the incredibly positive thing was he came out hot. I mean, he hit on maybe, I don't know, like almost like 20 of his first 21 throws, finishes 28 of 39 for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, I get that this is a bad defense and a bad team they're playing, but Stretch, did you see a more confident quarterback? And as kind of you had talked about recently, a guy that maybe was able to get the point of the football where it needed to go.
Yeah, that's what you want to see as a Cowboy fan. You want to see that nose of that football turn it over in tight windows. And when he can throw those deep overs and turn that nose over like he did to CeeDee Lamb, when you see him throw that out like he did when he hit Cooper on the touchdown, those are the things that you want to see, those tight window throws with that nose turning over and getting in the right place. The great thing is, and we're not going to get into style pointing it, playing in 72 degrees, it's indoors, like receivers are holding on to the football like they should be doing. Those are all positive things. You can't take that away from them. But remember, the key is, and I think Chris Collinsworth talked about it tonight on the broadcast, it's putting that back foot in the ground, and you still see him coming off of that back foot awful early.
Yeah, that's interesting because they did break it down. And it was kind of after he got hot, and we're kind of showing that. And they even, I think Collinsworth said he went back and looked at some tape from before the injuries, 2018 or 19, and took a peek at it. I thought that was really interesting. That was something you had been bringing up quite a bit. The receivers, you said it. Made some. There weren't really a lot of drops. Well, by the way, what did you think of that early, before the game got out of hand, which had happened pretty quickly, but that first possession where they tried that little trick play where I believe it was Cedric Wilson lateraled it out to the sideline. It was dropped. Did you that was a pretty strange looking play. What did you make of that?
Well, I think it was a 3rd and 17 situation. You really don't have any great calls for, picking up 17 yards on 3rd down. And they kind of thought, hey, let's throw this out there and let's see how the timing works. I mean, I didn't have any problem with it at the right part of the game. I mean, early in the game like that, you're trying to take advantage of the fact that you get possession of the football. The timing of it was a little messed up. It's always hard to practice. I mean, that's one of those things where usually, it's at the end of the half or something like that where you're wanting to see something like that happen for a big play. But I thought it was, the timing of it was, it was well called, the timing, and it just didn't happen to work out, and Amari dropped the ball there. But hey, it's one of those things where anytime you're running those type plays, you're giving the defense other thoughts and other things to work on. And right now, it's exactly what's happening in Arizona. They're thinking, oh boy, how are we going to practice this week?
All right. It was just a beat down of the offense. Schultz took a vicious hit. And again, it may have actually been illegal when you really look at it, but it still was it might have been up around the neck area. There was some debate on Twitter. But again, he continues to be a weapon, and he came back in that game. Are you, as far as the weapons on offense, is this a game that you think, okay, maybe they've got it back, or are you still in kind of wait and see mode with figuring in the kind of team they just played against?
No, here's my concern. If you're asking me for a heads up, it's outdoor weather, it's wind, it's cold, it's those kind of things. That's not taking anything away from what they did tonight. It's not taking anything away from, do I think this offense is a very high potent? Absolutely. They got a lot of weapons, like you said. Schultz, he's got a great feel for running those inside stick routes. He knows where to sit it down in the coverages. You see Lamb can get through the seam. He's tough enough to make the catches. Gallup. Cooper, great job by those guys. And they are, they got, telling you, you got to pick your poison when you play this team. And I thought they ran the ball pretty decent tonight. And that, to me, that's a good thing. I like that they've got Connor Williams back in a position that he's comfortable with at left guard. I'll be glad when Tyron gets back, and hopefully he'll be healthy and ready to go next week. So you're not seeing that rotation of Steele and Nasheki at left tackle. A lot of people say, well, why didn't they save that? Why didn't they save that touchdown pass to Steele where he was eligible as a tight end? Why don't you save that? To me, again, you're making defenses have to see things to work on. You could come up with some other different wrinkles. I love that they showed it. I love that they went out and just absolutely assaulted a Washington team that they should have done that to. Block the punt, recover it. And still you're playing, Cooper Rush goes in the game, late the game, and he throws a touchdown pass to Turner. So I think, everybody gets an A for me, just regardless of who they played. Yes, it was a depleted Washington team with 20-something guys on the COVID list, but the bottom line is you don't control that. You control your own play, and they went out and just assaulted and got after a football team, and you want to see that. Do I think the offense is back? And I'm giving you a long answer. Hey, you know what? If it's 72 degrees and they're playing indoors, you better watch out.
Yeah, and there's a chance they could get a couple of those to start the playoffs. So we'll see which way this is headed. Have you seen teammates literally take a swing at each other on the sideline before in all your years in the NFL and then also in playing college and coaching college? Have you seen something like that?
Never. And I'm shocked that those guys were college teammates. I'm shocked that it went down like that. I have no idea what was said, but it had to be something that was very, it was, it had to be something that really struck that nerve to get to get him to fire a punch. And again, that's Allen and I believe it's Payne. I mean, they're college teammates. It was shocking to see that. No, I've never seen anything like that before, and I think that's exactly about the type of effort that you saw them put out was about what you saw right there. I mean, it was a team that I would not want to be on that flight headed to Washington here in about an hour and a half. That's not going to be fun.
All right, and lastly, would you like to give the great Bones Fossil an A for that punt block? I mean, the game was already over. It was pretty funny to see him send that punt block. I'm sure you had a chuckle when you saw it happen. Are you pleased with the performance of one Bones Fossil?
Oh, I mean, anytime if they're going to give it to you and you want, you're able to send that, you're able to get it coordinated, and you're able to send that. That's what you got to give them. I mean, I know you're a little shocked that you give them a knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone, but that's exactly what you got to do to Bones Fossil and hell, the entire coaching staff. They did a great job and absolutely go out and just, hang a half 100 on a team. And it's a hell of a performance. I mean, again, style point and wins. I mean, that right there was a beatdown.
All right. It is the man that better known as Glenn Stretch Smith. And Stretch, we appreciate it. I did want to use this opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas, your family, and I wanted you to be a part of this. As you know, the holidays bring more family time than ever, work parties, last-minute shopping, get-togethers with old and new friends, good food, and even better drinks. 'Tis Miller time. Getting into the holiday spirit is as simple as giving your friends and family the gift of Miller time. Stretch, were you able to spend some time with family, and did Miller time make an appearance during some of those meetings?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was blessed to be able to spend a little time with my lovely girlfriend, and yeah, we partake in an adult beverage, and it happened to have been a Miller Lite, and it's always an honor to crack one open and know that they take care of us here on the Doomsday Podcast. So yes, Matt, that's exactly what I did.
Shop.millerlite.com. Also, Miller Lite, great taste, 96 calories. Give the gift of Miller Lite this holiday season by going to millerlite.com/doomsday to find delivery options or pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere they sell beer. 'Tis Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Stretch, thank you very much. Have yourself a nice evening.
You have yourself a blessed evening and a happy new year.
There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith with Stretch Plays. All right, there he was, Stretch. And man, he even, Ed, I never thought this would happen, but he's grown. He has an affinity now for Bones Fossil. I mean, this is a man he used to routinely give F's to.
Oh, they got 3 block punts this year.
Yeah, I think the team record might be 4. And Ed, I kind of had to chuckle. I mean, game's over. It's 42-7, and here comes Clement jumping in there to block a punt. I mean, Golston picks that thing up. Ed, this was one of those games. The dam just broke. Washington football team's in a bad way. They're attacking each other on the sideline. 2 of their starting defensive linemen who played college football together. What did you think when you saw that punt block? Were you pretty surprised?
Well, yeah, I was a little surprised, but more remarkable was that, then Golston winds up recovering in the end zone for another touchdown. And that he became the 19th different Cowboys player to score a touchdown this season, which is a franchise record. In fact, they reset the franchise record in that regard several times in this game because, Terrence Steele got a big man touchdown catch. He's an offensive tackle, and he became the 18th different player, which was a franchise record. And so then they reset that when DeMarcus Lawrence scored, and again when Goldson recovered the block punt in the end zone. But it was just a night that Washington couldn't do anything right. And, they've had a terribly difficult couple of weeks, not only with COVID, but, then they had the player, the safety, backup safety Everett was involved in a fatal car accident the other night. His passenger was killed, so they had to deal with that. They played at Philadelphia last Tuesday night in a postponed and rescheduled game, and then had to come here and play on a short week on the road against a team that had dominated them, just a couple weeks before. So very difficult situation for Ron Rivera. And I know from having talked to him before the last game that he was already upset with what he viewed as some inequities in the way Washington's season was scheduled. So I can't imagine how he felt after everything they endured this week and having again to play 2 road games in a very short space of time within the division, and how unfair he might have perceived that to be. But I don't think under any circumstances he would attempt to justify the clear disparity we saw between these two teams today that was very accurately reflected on the scoreboard.
All right. As this thing heads toward the finish, Ed, we knew before even today that we were going to have a Cowboys playoff game. I love the thought of Doomsday continuing on, and it certainly will. Ed, the only question though becomes, and I'm sitting here looking at what the Packers have left. They've got Packers host the Vikings next Sunday, and then they have to go to the Lions. So it doesn't look great. I was looking at the Cowboys perhaps getting that first seed. It really looks like, Ed, maybe the best scenario would to be able to get that 2 seed. How do you see this thing as you kind of approach these final couple of weeks?
Well, I think you do the best you can, and I think Mike McCarthy is going to go all in and continue trying to win for the reasons I expressed earlier, and try to put themselves in the most favorable position going into the postseason. They'd have to, obviously, if they don't get the number 1 seed, then Green Bay would be the only team to get a bye the first week. That increases the challenge. Everybody else has to play an extra game. Cowboys would play that game at home, presumably against maybe a team with a 500 or so record. So they should be substantially superior to them. And we've talked about what a great team they are when they play at home most of the time. So they'd have a clear advantage. And then you just have to hope somebody beats Green Bay while you continue winning. And then at the end, that Green Bay's not around anymore, and being the 2nd seed allows you to play at home, the NFC Championship game at home. It's entirely possible that could happen. I think it's happened. Tampa Bay went to Green Bay and won last year to advance to the Super Bowl. So as much as Aaron Rodgers has talked about the fact that, what is he, 2-6 or something like that in NFC Championship games, or 1-6, he always talked about, well, if we could get one of these games, we should be playing these games at home, then we'd have a real chance. And then they got the game at home last year and they didn't win. Tampa Bay still went to the Super Bowl. So Green Bay's fallible. They can be beaten in those conditions that time of year, but it's going to be really hard, I think, for somebody to do it.
Yeah, Ed, it's just funny how we go from week to week not knowing what this Cowboys team is, but when you were just kind of doing it there, it's winning at Green Bay feels pretty tough. We saw what happened to Tampa Bay recently. It was just kind of a weird game where they just flat out went out there and didn't score. It's one of those years where it could be. Ed, I think back to those years, 2003, if you'll remember, the Giants weren't great, but they got hot in the playoffs. They obviously beat the Cowboys in that divisional game in 2000. What am I saying? Not 2003. That'd have been 2007. Yeah. There's no reason to count the Cowboys out. Now, again, would I be shocked if they lost in the first round of the playoffs? No. But I just think right now, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like they have as good a chance as anyone other than the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, tonight you say that. I'm not sure I would have made that same statement last week or the week before. Sometimes I watch the Rams and and remember how they started and watch them play and see Stafford at his best and think, wow, that's going to be a really tough team to beat. But the thing that Dallas has, I think that's better than what anybody else has, is that pass rush. You can beat Tom Brady, as the Giants proved in Super Bowls, if you can rush the passer on a consistent basis. And with what they have up front, they can do that. And that could be the difference against Aaron Rodgers too. The Cowboys don't run the ball like they used to be able to run the ball. Their balance was the thing that gave them a chance up there the last time they played in the postseason against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, and McCarthy was the coach, and they lost on the Dez play. But this is a different team. I mean, they don't run the ball that well, but they're capable of being overwhelming with the pass rush and taking the football away. And if their offense can be good enough to score on those opportunities, maybe it'll be enough. But somebody's going to have an awfully good offensive line and a quarterback who can get the ball out fast on a consistent basis and do it accurately and move around when necessary to be able to overcome this pass rush that Dan Quinn can put out there every down.
And honestly, Ed, COVID's become such a huge story again. In a sense, you get this close to having a shot at this thing now. Not that they haven't been careful, but I think they're going to have to go into overdrive in that area. And the hope is with an unvaccinated guy like Amari, who's already had it, and then the other unvaccinated player, Keanu Neal, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
He's already had it. They're back. I mean, again, even vaccinated players and even booster type players are getting this. I think they're going to have to be extremely vigilant in that area, and I think they are. I mean, Ed, this is unprecedented. I mean, we're being. I've already been outlawed from the Star. Now you will, and everybody else will. And I don't understand that. I mean, that seems kind of silly, but whatever. We won't make this about us. But COVID will have a say in these playoffs. I mean, it's having a say week to week. It had a say in the Washington football team being awful tonight, I think, because they had to play on such a short notice, and it's going to play a do. I mean, you look at the college thing, Ed. Bowl games
being canceled all over the place. We just had 3 NFL games postponed. So yeah, it's a big, like Tom Brady said, it's going to be a bigger factor this year than it was a year ago. And it seems to be coinciding with the NFL's most important games. And that's why, you mentioned it vaguely. I'll be a little more specific. The NFL is changing its media access because of the continuing concern about this variant and it's spreading, even though the symptoms seem to be less than other variants. That this Omicron strain is very contagious. So they aren't testing players like they were before. They're only testing symptomatic players, and still you have less testing and more positives and more players missing games. And finally, the NFL getting to the point last week where they had to postpone games for the first time this year. So yeah, you're right. It is going to be a huge concern. Now, I think the interesting thing and so that's one of the reasons media is not going to be allowed in-person access to interview Cowboys players and coaches the remainder of the regular season and presumably through the playoffs as we have, to this point. We'll only get in-person access after games like we did tonight. From this point forward, your team is not going to be covered as well because there's not going to be the access that we've had to players in person, even though not in the locker room. We've been able to ask questions directly, and they've done a tremendous job, quite honestly, of getting us all the high-profile players every week. So I appreciate that the Cowboys did that. I think this could have been worked out differently, but I understand that they're going to take every opportunity to do this when they can do it and justify it by saying we're trying to protect our season and our playoffs and our postseason and our Super Bowl. I get all that. But, I would say that, the Cowboys last year showed how dedicated they were, when a lot of players and coaches kind of created their own bubble by using the hotel at the Star, which Mike McCarthy was trying to do because he had COVID in his house at home among, some of his family members. So he checked into the hotel, but albeit too late, he already was infected. And then he tested positive and he missed a game. So they know Dan Quinn missed a preseason game. They know, they understand. And I think they care enough that, especially now, geez, it's only a month. it could make the difference in us going to a Super Bowl or not. I think the players who matter the most would definitely advocate for doing whatever's necessary to isolate people and give themselves the best chance to be healthy and have a full roster available in the playoffs.
Well said. And I thought it was I didn't really know how to take it. The Cowboys announcement on this part, I don't know if you saw it. It said all reporters will now be given the Mosley treatment. I thought that was a little much.
I thought you were banned pre-pandemic. But maybe I'm wrong.
I came in there. We missed each other actually when I was out there at the AT&T Stadium. Real quick, Ed. Last thing I wanted to say: power to thrive. How cool is that? 2 Timothy 1:7. Ed, you honor the Sabbath, always have. I want to read this verse to you, okay? This is a late night devotional. God has not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind. Ed, that really describes you in a lot of ways.
I thought so.
Power to Thrive by Rich Gavnis. He's become a friend of mine. The man is a big-time motivational speaker. I mean, Ed, I've seen you speak. You can hold an audience in the palm of your hand. Rich can do it. And power here, the people pay a lot of money for this book. You can get it free though by listening to this podcast. Go to powertothrive.net and then hold the book up. Send me a picture of the book, and then you're going to get a free T-shirt, a Doomsday T-shirt. I'm very excited to be sending those out soon. Ed, that is really all the time we have. I do love over your right shoulder right now. I can see Tom Landry talking to one of his favorite players, Don Meredith, Dandy Don, when he was working Monday Night Football. That had to be a neat thing when he interviewed. But Ed, great stuff, great work from you today, and we appreciate your continued dedication to the Doomsday Podcast.
And I'm so dedicated. I've already been assigned next week's game, so I'll be here in this very same room after the Cowboys play the Arizona Cardinals, who present a unique challenge to the Cowboys defense with Kyler Murray's running ability. The Cowboys are going to have to deal with a running quarterback in their final 2 regular season games, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, and then Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. Both are among the best running quarterbacks in football. And if we remember not so long ago when the Cowboys went to New Orleans, they dealt not so well with a running quarterback in Taysom Hill, who became the first Cowboys opponent in history to run for over 100 yards as a quarterback. I think it's happened 75 times in NFL history. A quarterback's had a 100-yard rushing game. Had never happened against the Cowboys until Taysom Hill did it to him when the Cowboys played there after Thanksgiving.
Okay, I like that preview. Well done. And Ed, I will pull off the rare daily double. I will be covering the Sugar Bowl January 1st, late night game in New Orleans, and then I'll be scrambling to get to the Metroplex to cover Cowboys versus Cardinals. Okay, this is a Werder-like work ethic that I will display. And Ed, turn off the lights. I don't think anybody's left at the stadium except for you. You've had a long day. Before you leave the field, go out and sit. Oh no, they're already gone. I guess the Washington took those benches with them, didn't they?
They were still out there when we began, because I shot an element for SportsCenter in the morning on the field, and I was looking around, where do I want to do the podcast from? And I looked over and I thought, maybe I should go sit on those Washington heated benches and do it from there. They were so topical pregame, but seem irrelevant now. So I opted to go inside where it was quiet, and where I knew they wouldn't take my seat out from under me and put it on some, loaded on a truck.
Well, by the way, let's thank the Nation family. They had a suite waiting on you tonight.
Yep,
we appreciate them, and also, of course, Goodness Steak Seasoning. Ed, that is the seasoning I sent out to you. Jason Velo made that. You've been putting it on burgers, chicken. I sent that out as a Christmas gift to several people, and they're already thanking me. And really, some of my grilling friends are liking it even more. You can go to bringthetasty.com. That's bringthetasty.com. We are fortunate to have so many great partners. And Ed, you'll find that when the Cowboys are great, I think it's mainly because they love our podcast, but it also helps when the Cowboys get on a roll and people start lining up to partner with us. We appreciate everybody who's been a part of this one. For Ed Werder, for Mark Frito Friedman, for Matt Mosley, I'm signing off. Good night, everybody.
In the California Road Trip Republic, we believe you take adventure for a ride. Whether coastal cruising, mountain motoring, or redwood roaming, discover beauty around every turn. Your California road trip can kick off from anywhere.
Starting route.
But it should always start at visitcalifornia.com. Then buckle up, crank those tunes, and ride with us in the California Road Trip Republic.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.